spirituality. It causes so much confusion today. Is it a different kind of religion? Is it a cultural tradition or practice? In fact, in online dating, there's even a category called spiritual, but not religious. Well, my guest today, Betsy Chasse, is a filmmaker and an author here to help us navigate through all this confusion. Betsy, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I had to check a spiritual but not religious on my online dating site.
Absolutely, me too.
Yeah.
And my husband now had no idea what the word even meant.
Right, well most people don't know what it means because a really great, wonderful teacher I know, his name is Frank, he says that the English language is kerplunk. And I talk about this in my book because we've basically reduced all of our wonderful words down to one word for this, one word for this, and one word for this. So there's like one word for spirituality, and it just kind of means everything. And at first I was like, well, God, that doesn't fit. But if you think about it, I like to look at everything in life as spiritual because it is. I mean, we're here having this experience, and it's pretty spiritual to me. I mean, think about what you went through to be born and what you went through to give birth, right? That's a very spiritual experience. So I think everything is spiritual.
So you've written a book, Tipping Sacred Cows.
Yes.
What is a sacred cow?
That's a great question. So a sacred cow is anything that we hold up against criticism. So like the Bible is a sacred cow. The Constitution is a sacred cow. So the way I look at it is that not only do we have sacred cows out in the world, but we also have sacred cows within us, which are basically beliefs that we hold up against criticism. We do not question these beliefs or ideas that we're basically living. Humans are meaning attaching machines. So basically we have to have a meaning for everything. And once we attach a meaning to something, we believe it, and then we begin to live our life that way. So here's an easy example. If you've somehow decided that men in red shirts are horrible people, every time you see a guy in a red shirt, you're gonna freak out because that's what your belief system, and that's how you've programmed your brain. Your operating system goes, uh-oh, dude in red shirt, run, right? So that just automatically goes there. And these beliefs are they're so deeply hidden, they're basically within our subconscious, and so that's why I call them sacred cows. We need to tip them because if you want to live the life that you truly desire, those are what's really blocking you from doing that.
Now, you are also a filmmaker. Mm-hmm. You've made an incredible movie, What the Bleep Do We Know?
Right.
And you interviewed 14 experts in quantum physics and spirituality. What was your main conclusion that you drew from making that movie?
So we talked to people that were basically, teachers, gurus, quantum physicists, molecular biologists, and neuroscience. And what I've come to really understand is that if you want to think of things in terms of what's spiritual and what isn't spiritual, I don't like to separate things that way. But I figured out that really most of us, me included, never had a good understanding of how my brain worked and how my brain and my body worked. And I think one of the issues that I have with, quote, spirituality or New Age is that they're always talking about getting out of your body. And, the body is the meat packet and all this stuff,
right,
which really irritates me because the body and the brain are an incredible, amazing machine that we actually just don't know how to use. And that's where neuroscience, and which people think, well, that's not very spiritual, but if you think about it, if you can have an understanding of how your brain works and how your body works, then you become really connected. That's a very big spiritual buzzword, right? That whole wholeness, connected, because now I can go, oh, I'm working in unison. And once I can have that all kind of jiving in harmony, that's when you really get to that other place of peace and connectivity and feeling like you're at one with stuff. But most of the time we're all running around like chicken with our heads cut off because we don't know what anything means, we don't know what anybody's saying, and so we feel disconnected, and that's why we feel out of touch or out of balance or all those cool spiritual buzzwords.
Well, I like what you talked about in your book where you're very irreverent, and I'm a mom, you're a mom. We always want to do it right, but somehow when it comes to spirituality, we just feel like we're doing it wrong.
Right, that's because you feel like there's so many darn rules.
Right.
Which is why I basically said, screw it, I'm just gonna call everything spiritual. And
right,
then I don't have any rules to live by. There is, wouldn't you love that job to be like the one up in the heaven that's sitting around going, that's spiritual, that's not, that's like who gets those jobs? We're all, one of the biggest tenets of the New Age is to not be judgmental. But I find a lot of New Agers to be the most dogmatic, judgmental people I've ever met in my life. Oh my God, if you don't eat that kale, if you don't do it this way, for me.
You're not meditating enough.
Right, exactly, or right.
How dare you have that thought?
Exactly. Oh my God, you're bad for blaming.
Right,
it's like, leave me alone. So for me, part of what you asked before about what I learned about the bleep was like, once I really learned that this is a beautiful system that works together, once I can really understand that, I also kind of let go of like, people actually really have no idea. Like most of these gurus, most of these people, they don't know. They're just kind of making it up as they go along. So there are no rules. So if there are no rules, I can make my own rules. My rules basically come down to one thing. What brings me peace? What brings me happiness? What is meaningful to me? What is it that I value in my life, and how can I bring that into my life and share it in my life?
So in your book, you do a little bit of bashing. You
little
bash
bit.
the vision boards and you bash the crystal bowls. And
I bashed the bleep even too, though. Okay, so it was.
Well, but I'm just saying. So those are all tools that
Right.
that people use to raise their consciousness, to set that law of attraction
Right.
in play. Why do you believe they work or they don't work?
Well, I think that I bash them not because I think they're bad. I think because we become addicted to them. We begin to use them as excuses, and we don't actually. I think we've oversimplified, for instance, the law of attraction concept.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we've really turned this into a how do I get a Mercedes concept. Really, it's not a spiritual practice anymore. It's I want to get rich.
Right.
And so that's the problem that I have with it. I don't have it. My whole house is a living vision board. Every painting that I hang on the wall for my children, everything that I place in my house is a vision board. It's a reflection of what I want reflected back to me. That's a vision board. When you slap together pictures from the Vogue that you just paid for on a piece of cardboard that's you looking like Cindy Crawford and the Mercedes, and you sit there for 7 hours a day and you don't wonder why a Mercedes isn't flying out of your ass, that it's because you have not done the actual work that it takes to go, well, why am I asking for a Mercedes? I talk about this in my book. I'm not sure if this story's in my book or not, but I was that person for a long time. I totally wanted the Mercedes because Mercedes are cool, right? They're sexy, they're nice looking cars. But the truth is that once I really did the work about, well, what does the Mercedes really mean to me? Why is it that I want that Mercedes? I began to realize, oh, Mercedes means success. Mercedes means acceptance to me. Mercedes means security. It all had all these meanings. Remember, we're meaning attaching machines. So I'd attached all these meanings to Mercedes. And once I realized and I began to look around my life and I would go, well, I'm actually pretty successful. I kind of have love. I have all these things that thing is supposed to represent. I actually don't need that thing anymore. And so the Mercedes came off my vision board. And as I began to do that, I began to not need to make this thing that was this vision board. I began to just be it and live it and see it in my life.
It's interesting, when I wrote my book, Mystic in a Minivan, I
love
always
that.
thought I should have wrote Mystic in a Mercedes, as I'm driving around in a minivan that smells like spilt food and,
Right.
diaper
Right.
bag and all of that.
Who wants a Mercedes? You have little kids. You've ever been in the back of a car with two people with two little kids? It's kind of nasty back there, actually. I don't think I'll
I have
wait.
to make a confession. I finally traded in my minivan for a Mercedes.
But
finally.
well, that's good for you. I don't want to bash the Mercedes people. You can totally
No, but
have
my point is I hear what you're saying, and I think that it's really valuable because in the law of attraction, there's not much action, right?
Right.
We all sit around like, what do I want? How am I going to bring this in?
Right.
I'm sitting in my house, and I always say this to people, it's not just going to show up on your front door and come
Right.
and find you. You're really the co-creator of your own universe. You're the co-creator of what you want to bring into your life. So you have to create your own momentum.
Well, there's two things I want to say about that. First of all, there's a chapter in my book called Who is the Universe and Why Do They Have All My Stuff? And the reason that chapter is in my book is because I am like, people, for a bunch of people who want to take personal responsibility, we've taken the word God out of the conversation. Nobody wants to say God. Oh my God, that's
Not
terrible.
PC.
Ooh, that's bad. So we'll say universe instead. The universe is providing. How exactly is that different? Because I really don't know. So and then we behave as this, the universe is some divine vending machine that's just plopping out whatever we want. Oh, I think I'll put a Mercedes on my vision board. Plop, there's your Mercedes. It's like, no. My favorite physicist.
And I'm spiritual because I got it,
Right, exactly. You're
Yeah.
way more spiritual than I am. My favorite physicist is a guy named Amit Goswami. And he has this little funny saying that he says. He says, you got to do, right? And so you can't just do, and you can't just be. You have to do. And that's really what life is. We have to take that time to dream the dream. But then we cannot just sit there and wait for the dream to magically come to us. I know everyone wants to say, oh, it's magic, it's synchronicity. I love those are such sexy words. But none of that occurs when you're sitting in a dark room meditating. You have to be. You have to do and be and do and be and do and be. And that's how you get these things. And you have to be realistic. You know, if you are, like for me, you know, if I'm 5'2", right, and I kind of got a chassis on me, and you know, I'm cool with that. If I slap a picture of Cindy Crawford on my vision board, then I'm just not being realistic. And we set up these crazy expectations, and then we disappoint ourselves because we're failures because we're not achieving them.
I think there's a lot of punishment and a lot of suffering around that.
Absolutely.
You know? One of the things I really liked about your book and your voice is you're a mother and I'm a mother. And there's so many women out there today that, you know, we're already beating ourselves up. We're already trying to be the best mother we can. We have situations going on in our home. Maybe we're going through a divorce or some kind of situation in our lives. And then this is just another thing to just attack yourself on.
Right, because you don't go to the right yoga studio and you're not wearing the right yoga pants. And
you didn't meditate enough.
You didn't meditate enough. And you didn't, boy, you must have not made the right vision board. Clearly you did not use the right markers or whatever it is, you know. We do have, I think that humans in general, not just moms, but I think women very more so, overcomplicate things. We make things really hard, and we also make these rules that I have to do this, this, and this to attain that. You know, one of the things that I stopped doing in my life, which was probably the biggest weight lifted from me, was that, you know, we are told, especially in the American culture, to pursue happiness, to seek enlightenment, and to find balance. So constantly we're told to seek, pursue, and find. Seek, pursue, and find. We're like little rats running around going, I'm seeking, I'm pursuing, I'm finding. And so what I realized is that the big sort of sacred cow of the New Age, New Thought, spiritual movement is the idea that everything that you're looking for is within you. So I sat back and I'm like, well, this is really contradictory, because if everything that I'm looking for is within me, why am I seeking, pursuing, and finding it? And so I said, oh, I think I have it, I'm gonna stop. That required me to change my definition of what happiness looked like, what balance looked like, and what enlightenment looked like, and begin to go, instead of seeking, pursuing, and finding those things, I'm gonna look at the life that I have, and I will see that it's there. And I began to see, wow, I do have those things. They don't look like the pictures in the magazine, but I actually have them. I love my life. My life is chaotic because I'm a mom.
Right.
How would it not be chaotic?
Right.
For me to live into some unrealistic paradigm in which I am constantly zen and I don't scream, hey you, across the parking lot to my kid or whatever, is unrealistic. But we keep creating these very unrealistic pictures, and then we try to seek, pursue, and find them, and then we're failures because we don't. So I just stopped.
I liked when you were talking about the law of attraction in your book, and you said a lot of the law of attraction is learning what we don't want.
Right.
You know, so I think that we have to go through some cycles and say, you know what, let's refine that a little bit more. This is what I really want to happen, or what brings me joy, and sometimes it's surprising to us.
Absolutely. I think you just, for me, and I think for a lot of people, it comes down to clarity, to really discerning the difference between what I've been told I should want versus what it is that I really, truly desire. So I'm a big fan of Joseph Campbell, and he talks a lot about living in bliss, and I really wanted to understand that concept because, you know, a lot of people, you see people with the big smiles plastered on them, I live in bliss, and you're like, they are so unhappy. You know, you can totally tell.
They're always smiling.
Everything is great. You know, and so for me, I had to redefine what it meant, what bliss was. Again, a lot of what I talk about is defining these words truly, and that's what my book is about. It's always, I take a word like enlightenment, bliss, and I really bring it back down to what does that really mean? And what it comes down to is bliss is not unicorns and rainbows 24/7. You know, my life is sometimes really painful and hard. There are days when I suffer and I hurt, and there are days when I feel amazing and so exhilarated, and that's bliss. Both of those two places and everywhere in between, that's really bliss. So once I was able to go, oh, I understand it. I mean, a really wonderful friend of mine just the other day said something that kind of blew my mind. She described it in such a perfect way. Her name is Zena. You should have her on her show someday. She's amazing. She said something that was so beautiful. She talked about, you know, we always have this big question, why are we here? Like, why are we here is like the hugest question. How the hell do we all get here, right? And so if you think about it, when people talk about out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences, they float into this ethereal place. This is what she said. And she said, but what happens is, if you think about what we're doing here, this is the detail. This is life in detail. So we're living life in detail. So we've already kind of had the ethereal floating experience, and we get to go back there probably when we die. But what we do get to do, right now we're living in detail. And the detail is every piece of it, not just the Disneyland trips. The most amazing thing about what we're doing here in this reality is we're living in detail. And so we get to experience everything in detail. That means the highs and the lows. And I take that on as fun. I know that's weird. Like, I go through a painful experience, and I allow myself to feel that. And I sit back and I go, oh my God, what an amazing opportunity to live and to experience that.
Betsy, thank you so much for being here. It was amazing fun.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for doing what you're doing too. I mean, this world needs a lot more loving mamas like you.
Yeah, mama.
Yeah, it's time.